And it looks like we are live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in. Give me a second here. We have to get the Facebook groups in here and get everybody here in our Mile High Huddle community together for a wonderful Friday evening here. Mile High, hello, everybody in Broncos country. Welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I am your host, Lance Sanderson, and joining me as per usual is Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. And dude, obviously the draft is we're in the middle of draft season. Finding Broncos series is coming out, but we're going to go away from that a little bit tonight because free agency also opened up. The legal tampering period started on Monday, the official open of the new league year, 2 p.m. Mountain Time on Wednesday. A lot of news going on. How you doing, man? Is your head a whirlwind yet? Or are you still busy working on your supermarket simulator thing?
Hey, Supermarket Simulator. It's a game, all right. No, I mean it's on a serious note, it's nice to have a video game that I'm actually enjoying that I'm able to use and take a break from, all the football stuff going on. But yeah, the Broncos, it's been a not so busy free agency, not like last year where they went out and got some big signings right away. Which we all expected, and that with Russell Wilson being cut, um, the cuts to save against the cap so they can eat the bigger dead cap hit this year compared to next year. All that wasn't expected to be big. They're expected to be we're expected to try to make value signings, and that seems to be what they've been doing.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. It's just the biggest thing is all the quarterback movement that's going on.
Yeah.
Desmond Ridder traded, Kenny Pickett traded, Mac Jones traded, all these guys. I mean, they were done with the team that they were with, but man, Sam Howell as well. And some of it is what they're going for. It's just a little bit on the ridiculous side.
Yeah.
What these trades have been, and definitely trying to keep my head from spinning with, especially with how much the Broncos are in need of a quarterback as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that, man. I mean, obviously you got Joe Flacco going to the Colts to back up Anthony Richardson if he's healthy and able to play this season. That's a kind of an interesting pairing there. Like you said, Kenny Pickett getting traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Jimmy Garoppolo obviously signing with the Rams about an hour or so before we decided to come live here for you guys on a wonderful Friday evening. It's very difficult right now to kind of find that veteran stopgap option for the Broncos. I think the one last quality candidate, if you want to call it quality, is Ryan Tannehill right now, formerly with the Miami Dolphins and currently with the Tennessee Titans anyway. And then obviously the trade market that it wasn't, and it was never actually going to be with Justin Fields. I mean, there was a lot of rumors with him potentially going to Pittsburgh there for a little bit, which that actually makes a lot of sense to me. I'll get into that here in a second. But Atlanta was another name. The Broncos were continuously tied with him as well. But have you heard anything in terms of a market for Justin Fields? Because as of right now, I mean, you saw Sam Howell get traded with a couple of picks back to the Washington Commanders to go to the Seattle Seahawks. The Kenny Pickett trade, similar return there. Is there any news on Justin Fields and what his potential market is right now?
Yeah, there's not much of one. The
Yeah.
Eagles were exploring that before Kenny Pickett, and they couldn't come to an agreement there. It just sounds like the Bears are asking for a little bit too much. I don't expect the Broncos to be involved or to get involved. It doesn't make sense for the Broncos to go away from a player like Russell Wilson with the issues that he had and all of that without getting all into it. And then going to Justin Fields, who is very much the same and a lower quality of it. Higher quality runner, lower quality passer, to be clear. I just don't see the Broncos wanting to go with that. Doesn't process the game very well. All these things that Sean Payton has said repeatedly that he wants in a quarterback. That's not Justin Fields. So I don't expect the Broncos to be interested there. At this point, I think they're looking at, still a couple guys left on the free agent market that they'll look at. Zach Wilson is a guy that's been linked to the Broncos. I haven't heard, anything there if there's actual interest or not. And then the draft, obviously.
Yeah.
I think they're guaranteed at this point. No, I shouldn't say guaranteed. I think it's 98% certain right now that they won't land one of those top 5 or top 4 quarterbacks, Williams, May, McCarthy, Daniels, in no particular order. And I think that they'll end up trading down, as seems to have been the case, and then try to get a quarterback a little bit later. I still think that only 4 quarterbacks go in the first round, which helps the Broncos. But obviously still a lot of time between now and the draft. And Papa Bear comes in with a $2 donation saying, "Good evening, Broncos country. Hashtag McCarthy." Thank you, Papa Bear, for joining us. I hope you had a wonderful birthday yesterday, the day before, recently. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I hope you had a wonderful birthday.
Yeah, sorry. All of a sudden, my internet decided to just glitch out. I do apologize for that. Thank you, Papa Bear, for joining us. We got Michael Ronquillo jumping in here as well. Good evening, Lance and Eric on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Go Broncos. Thank you, Michael, for your support. We got another one jumping in here just in the past couple of seconds. We've got Rock Chalk jumping in here. Good to see you on the show, Rock Chalk. We appreciate your support, dropping the hammer down with a $20 super chat. Looking more likely that Jarrett Stidham is Broncos quarterback 1 going into the season, and it appears the Vikings are primed to trade up for a quarterback. Do you think the Broncos should take Nix at 12 or trade down, risking him not being there later on? I'm going to jump us off here. Obviously, the big news of the day was early this morning. The Minnesota Vikings agreed with the Houston Texans to trade up to get the number 23 overall pick. So now they're sitting with the number 11, number 23. They could potentially package that deal up. It sounds like they are very enamored with a couple of different quarterbacks, namely Drake May and JJ McCarthy. That move looks like it's going to happen. If the Broncos are sitting there at number 12 overall, Bo Nix is one name that's been constantly linked to the Denver Broncos, and I am not here for that noise, at least not at number 12. Eric, what do you think?
I don't think Bo Nix is the option at 12. I do not think the Broncos will take a quarterback at 12. I think they will trade down, and I will say this. From every conversation that I have had over the past 2 months that are about Bo Nix and Michael Penix, it has always been the same conclusion for it. Mm-hmm. The media and fans of the draft and all that stuff like that are pushing Bo Nix and Penix a lot higher than the NFL views them.
Yeah,
I haven't heard a single team mention Michael Penix before the 3rd round, and I haven't talked to anybody who's mentioned Bo Nix higher than a late, like bottom 5 pick in the 1st round at best. Mm-hmm. And they all were very clear. It won't be us. It won't be their team that the people that I spoke with work for. That they wouldn't be doing that, but mm-hmm. They could see another team trying to get that 5th-year option. So we'll see. As I was saying, a lot of time between now and the draft, things can change. It's always a fluid situation. I don't think the Broncos take a quarterback at 12 at this time. I think they'll trade down, gather more picks, mm-hmm. And try to help the roster because they're in such a tough financial spot that they need these young guys on these cost-controlled contracts to help ease the dead cap hit a little bit this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. We've got one quick one here that I want to grab. Quentin Caldwell jumping in just a few seconds ago. First things first, welcome in. This is the first time I remember seeing your name. If you've been in here before, I do apologize for not remembering off the top of my head, but welcome into Dove Valley Deep Divers. We definitely appreciate your support. He says, "Hey guys, great to be here. It's great to have you. It's very great to have you. We appreciate you for joining us, and hopefully we can keep you entertained here for about an hour or so on a wonderful Friday evening." Eric, you had mentioned something about the big cap hit. And before we get into that, I was talking about Russell Wilson. Before we get into that, and we'll transfer our conversation here to the free agency aspect of ththings.
Well, I think first things first is that just before we went live, the Broncos signed a linebacker.
Oh, yeah.
I think that should be the first thing on the menu. The new news: they signed linebacker Cody Barton, who spent last year with the Washington Commanders, was there drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, played for them for a couple years. 1 year, $3.5 million for the contract. It's fine. He's not a cover guy. He's a run defending linebacker. He racks up tackles. He's very similar to Alex Singleton and the way he plays. Not quite as, well-versed attacking the run between or outside of the tackles. But he can take on blocks. He can open up space. He can, eat those blockers and everything and allow other people to get in there and get after the ball carrier a little bit.
Yeah, so I have him pulled up here on profootballfocus.com just to kind of get an idea of what we're looking at here. Last year, 83 tackles, 25th in the NFL, 37 assisted, tied for 15th, 1 interception, tied for 14th at the linebacker position. Overall defensive grade, 53.9, run defense, 43.9, pass rush, 61.1, and coverage, 66.2. We're talking about just a guy here, guys. He's not going to be an upgrade over Josie Jewell by any stretch of the imagination. And like Eric said, he's just kind of run, fit, flow to the football, see ball, chase ball kind of a linebacker. And quite honestly, he's not necessarily very good at it, if we're going to be honest with each other here. Now that we're done crapping all over Cody Barton. I hate to do it like that. Like this is just a statistical analysis here, guys. I want to go back and double check the tape on him. I thought he played a little bit better than what they were grading him at Pro Football Focus. But again, we're talking just a guy. This is another body. Obviously, the Broncos needed a cheap replacement for Josie Jewell, who signed with the Carolina Panthers early in free agency. So there's also the rumors of Drew Sanders potentially moving to edge full-time, which is something I'm not a huge fan of. So adding depth to the linebacker room was definitely a need for this team. We're going to get into that here in just a couple of minutes. But, man, interesting way to open up the free agency period here for the Denver Broncos. Before we break the rest of it all down for you, though, we have a special shout-out that we need to give to our friends over at AG1. Guys, the older I get, the more seriously I know I have to take care of my health and nutrition. I'm 32 years old, going on 33, but it's a big thing for me to try to get myself, just take care of my body a little bit better. Enter AG1. No matter what you guys do for a living, it can become all too convenient to rely on coffee and caffeine. That's not great for your body, especially your blood pressure. There's always the dreaded crash that comes with caffeine. With AG1, you get sustained energy, so you're not reaching for another cup of coffee in the afternoon. And on top of that, guys, I know that swallowing those gigantic horse pill vitamins, that kind of sucks. I've learned recently how important it is to take care of your gut health, and AG1 kills all three of those birds with one stone, and it does so in an impressive, life-altering fashion. Improved gut health, focus, energy, nutrition, all in one awesome, delicious smoothie. AG1 is next level.
AG1 is a supplement a lot of people trust to support their whole body health and help them feel, their best. If you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs when you first subscribe. Go to drinkag1.com/huddle. That's drinkag1.com/huddle. Check it out.
Yeah, check it out, guys. Thank you, AG1, for sponsoring our show tonight. We definitely appreciate you. GLP jumping in here off the top rope, $10 super chat. Go Broncos and go GLP. Thank you for joining us, as you are wont to do on every single show, not only here on a wonderful Friday evening for Dove Valley Deep Divers. Your support is always greatly appreciated here at the Mile High Huddle Podcast Network. Now, Eric, let's break down a little bit of what has gone on for the Broncos in free agency. Obviously, the Russell Wilson news and the contract designated as a post-June 1st cut to eat that bigger portion of the dead money this year. I believe it's $53 million going against the Broncos salary cap this year. How do the Broncos currently stand right now in terms of their salary cap space?
They sit with about $24 million in cap space at the moment. Russell Wilson obviously is going to count as a bigger cap hit than what he would have been had they kept him this year, just because of how they decided to work a $22 million option with it. They decided to pick it up, which helped them, or they decided not to pick it up, and it changed just a little bit about how they were able to, structure it, taking that big hit, the $53 million cap hit this year. And dead money, which helps them out because next year they're projected to have like over $100 million in salary cap space. So they're in a pretty good spot. 23 million, this year in overall cap space, but in functional cap space, it's a little bit less than that because of budgeting reasons. Teams often set up a portion of their salary cap space aside for the draft. The Broncos, if they trade down, acquire more picks, that'll count against the cap. That's going to be more there, and also setting some aside for in-season free agents as well. So in spending cap, I guess would be the way to put it, they're probably looking at closer to about 10 to 15 million in spending cap at the moment,
right?
Setting the rest of it aside.
And Phil McLaughlin jumping in here. I'm going to continue on that conversation, but we got to give Phil a shout out here. Good evening, Lance and Eric. Any thoughts on bringing in Mason Cole or Jadeveon Clowney? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life. Jadeveon Clowney, last I knew, he had a visit, I believe, with the Carolina Panthers, and I think he has a visit with the Jets as well. I'm not 100% certain on that. at least on the Jets part. I know that he had another visit scheduled here in the next couple of days, but I do know that he was going to be in Carolina to talk to those guys. Mason Cole, I believe you're talking. Is that the Texas Tech edge? I think, or
No,
are we talking?
he's a center.
Okay, so I must be thinking there's a Cole from Texas Tech that's in the draft this year. I believe. Damn,
Yeah, Miles Cole.
now I'm dry. Yes, thank you. Eric, what do you think on Mason Cole first, and then Jadeveon Clowney here in a minute?
I mean, if we're down to signing someone like Mason Cole, I'd rather just see what Alex Forsyth or Luke Wattenberg can do to win the position. As for Clowney, I think that his cost is going to be more than the Broncos can afford. Just the way it is. I mean, they're trying to sign bargain bin free agents to fill out the roster. It seems like that they're prepared to take a step back, especially on the defense this year. Which, if you take away the turnover streak that they had, it's could be quite hard for them to actually take a step back on defense. That turnover streak really boosted their all the stuff with that defense. But no, I think they're just going bargain bin guys a little bit. Obviously, I mean, Cody Barrett 1 year 3.5 has a max value of $4 million. There's $500,000 there in bonuses for him, apparently. And Brandon Jones was on the cheaper end of the safety market, I guess, a little bit, or more middle of the road. Malcolm Roach, more bargain bin guys under the radar a little bit, that they're kind of signing to fill one or two specific roles, really.
Yeah. I'm glad that you talked about those guys just a little bit, because it kind of moves our conversation forward into the questions that I wanted to ask you specifically about the new guys. Obviously, like you just mentioned, Brandon Jones, a former safety from Miami, came in 3-year, $22 million deal. Malcolm Roach, I believe 1 year, $2 million or something. I can't remember exactly. And for some reason, the Mile High Huddle page will not pull up on my computer to give you the actual numbers on that. But anyways, you're talking about Brandon Jones, a safety, as a potential replacement for what Justin Simmons brought to this team. And it's hard to replace a player of that caliber. I mean, we're talking about Justin Simmons, the NFL's leader in interceptions since he was drafted back in 2016, and an amazing leader in the locker room, but also out on the field, man. What does Brandon Jones bring to this defense that at the bargain bin price signing that you got for him, what does he bring that could potentially be a quality replacement to what Justin Simmons brought to this team?
I mean, if you're expecting to be at that Justin Simmons level, you're going to be extremely disappointed. His play against the run is hit or miss. He has one of the higher missed tackle rates, if I remember correctly, from the 2023 season. Hasn't played, a whole lot. Hasn't been a full-time starter there in Miami. More of a rotational piece for them. Started some games, but not others. And just with the way that they did their secondary under Vic Fangio last year, as well as injuries, there's been some of that. So he's fine in coverage. He's got a good understanding of his role and responsibility. He's got pretty solid range as well. He's got good ball skills. So he's a guy who can help, generate some of those interceptions and those big plays by the defense. But still worrisome to me. He was a little bit higher priced by the Broncos than I felt that he should have been. But it's not it's not a super like, oh, he was like 3 million. No, I had him at between 4 and 5, so on an average per year basis, and so just a little bit higher, which maybe the Broncos felt that they needed to do because this team probably won't be good this year.
Yeah, it's looking like we're not going to be good this year, quite honestly, and until we really kind of hammer down that final nail in terms of what the quarterback situation is going to be, this team is looking at. I mean, Jarrett Stidham starting games, and I mean, the Broncos fans across the country right now are kind of freaking out, and I'm like, you know what, Jarrett Stidham, man. Let's go, Jarrett Stidham. I'm here for this life. Give me a 1-16 season, and maybe we can actually start this rebuild off the proper way, get us some quality draft capital, and move forward that way. But back to Brandon Jones here. The Broncos also brought back their own safety, PJ Locke, on a 2-year, I believe, $7 million deal, something like that. And they still also have Caden Stearns on his rookie contract going into last year at his deal. All three of those guys happen to be playing together at the same time at the University of Texas. So they have a little bit of an understanding of how they work together within the defense. Is that going to help kind of boost the cohesion on the back end of this defense? And how do you think that Jones is going to work inside that rotation, given Stearns having a clean bill of health?
I think that they're looking at Jones and Locke being their starters and Stearns being that third safety. There is a massive overvaluation of Caden Stearns for playing less than 600
Yeah.
snaps
Oh,
in 3
absolutely.
years. And granted, he's missed a lot of time from injuries, and there's been a lot of splash plays when he's been out there on the field, but he can't stay out there on the field. But if they're able to get them there, the communication between the three of them, they have experience, and from what I understand through their Twitter accounts and everything, they've kept in communication. They've
Good.
remained close and everything and talking and everything like that. So they still have that off the field uh connection there between them, so which can help carry over onto the field. We always talk about chemistry with players and knowing who you're playing with and what they do and everything, and there seems to be a good connection there, which obviously it can help. If they can translate it to the field, it's never a negative.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, and you brought up something that I think is a little bit underrated. Like you said, we talk about chemistry and just working with cohesion, understanding not necessarily nonverbal but communication, but just that trust of where a person's going to be, understanding that they know what their assignment is, understanding that they know what your assignment is, being able to work without even verbally communicating with each other, kind of that sixth sense, more or less. I think that, like you said, that ability, that communication that they have going on off the field, despite not being on the same team, that's going to help them out a lot. Speaking of connections, we also brought in, the Broncos brought in interior defensive lineman Malcolm Roach, formerly with the New Orleans Saints. He is another Texas player, by the way. Introduce Malcolm Roach to the listeners a little bit. I'm not sure I've seen him play, quite honestly, not since he was at Texas.
He's a quality run defender, which the Broncos need. He might end up starting on them technically, even though they'll probably be more of a 2-down lineman front. Yeah, he's a quality run defender. He's got good stack and shed technique. Quality run defender. That's what we got in Malcolm Roach. Don't expect much more than that.
Cal M's jumping in here saying Roach is the best interior defensive lineman in free agency. Excuse me, sir. Christian Wilkins did exist, anyways. I'm giving you a hard time, Cal. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you, man. So when you're talking about interior run defense and what like I said, I haven't seen Roach. I'm going to do some free agency stuff after I get through some more of this, the draft content. We've got the Finding Broncos series. I'm going to do some film breakdowns after the draft, kind of do a good deep dive breakdown for everybody and show some clips of what they do. Before I get there, though, Eric, I got to ask you, what are we looking at here? You said quality run defender, but where at? Is he a nose tackle? Is he a 3-5 technique? Like what are we looking at here in terms of his build and what he brings to the field?
He's probably better, as a 0-1-2 technique. In obvious running situations, you can move him outside a little bit as a 4-5 technique. So he can kind of work from all over against the run a little bit. He's shown that he has a decent understanding and foundation when it comes to the knee drop technique that we talk about a lot with Byron Murphy. So he can move around, which is kind of what the Broncos needed. Last year, they were a little bit stagnant with their defensive front. At least between Roach and DJ Jones, they can switch those guys up a little bit and, try to get a little bit more creative up front instead of being stuck with Mike Purcell at the nose and DJ Jones outside or DJ Jones inside and Jonathan Harris outside.
Right.
Who Malcolm Roach is a tremendous upgrade over both of those guys, by the way. So it creates a little bit more versatility with the run defense, but still need that interior pass rusher to help out, take pressure off of Zach Allen, and a guy who can be that top guy off the edge as well. Still need those for the Broncos.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is that Zach Allen isn't good at football. Got it. We're good to go. Okay. I'm kidding. I'm putting words in your mouth. But I'm with you there. If you have the ability to slide all over the defensive line, that's something that I value highly when doing my grades in terms of grading players coming out of the draft, doing evaluations after the fact, just watching what these players are able to do at the NFL level. Trench work. If you are able to play multiple different positions, multiple different techniques, multiple different schemes, that is something that's going to be huge. So for you to say that Malcolm Roach is a player that can play inside, he can play to the outside a little bit, maybe as far outside as a 5 technique, keep him on the field a little bit in the early run situations, then get him off the field in pass situations. I would like to have a little bit more pass work coming out of him, but I'm intrigued to see what he actually does bring to the field. So that's a good baseline just understanding the player, and hopefully you guys followed along with that. I know it's a little bit football jargony there, but that's what we do here on Dove Valley Deep Divers. Let's see here. Where are we at? I was going to try to grab a couple of comments here. There was a couple that I'd seen, but now I'm not finding them anymore. So I guess we'll just continue moving forward here in terms of what has happened with the Denver Broncos in free agency. Obviously, the Cody Barton news just hit right as we were coming live. We also brought in Roach and Brandon Jones, but the big thing here that we've noticed is obviously Adam Troutman is back. You've got Michael Burton coming back. Lil Jordan Humphrey has come back. The Broncos restructured Tim Patrick. He's going to come back, although there's injury concerns there. Will Lutz was retained as well on his free agency deal. So we're getting a lot of the same guys coming back and bringing in that same kind of Sean Payton mentality, that Sean Payton culture. Obviously, PJ Locke in there as well. So, Erick, we know that the Broncos weren't necessarily, cash strapped by any stretch of the imagination where they couldn't go out and make some of these big signings, but they also had enough that they could have made probably another big move. These signings that they've brought back, the guys like the Locke and Tim Patrick, guys like that, is it more so that they wanted to kind of continue on with that culture? Bringing in Malcolm Roach kind of adds to that, the Sean Payton culture, or was it more that they didn't want to really be big players in free agency this season because they kind of understood we're not going to be very good right now, so we just got to kind of tread water as we can?
So just a slight correction with something you said. The Broncos have the cash to make all sorts of moves that they want. They don't have the cap. Cash and cap are two different things, two very separate things that just kind of work a little bit together. Not cash strapped, they're cap strapped.
Mm-hmm.
And they always wanted to keep these Peyton guys around, Adam Trotman, Will Lutz, Lil Jordan Humphrey. They wanted to keep them in town. That was always, the plan. They know Peyton's ways. They know what he wants, both on the field and in the locker room. And they're still trying to change the culture in it. And a big sign of that was parting ways with Justin Simmons, and why, while they're safe for now, why Garrett Bowles and Cortland Sutton aren't necessarily safe for good. I do expect both of them to be on the Broncos this year, but it's not 100% certain that they're back. Not with their financial situation, not with the fact that they've been a part of so many losing teams. And one of the big things is that you have to know how to win. And there's not many in that Broncos locker room that know how to win. Culture, that losing culture has sunk in, and you can see it and you can hear it with them in post-game conferences after losses when things don't, or especially after the start that they had last year. It's rough. And so they're trying to flip that. So it's a little bit of both. It is a little bit of the fact of this financial situation that they're in with the salary cap space, as well as still building up the culture in the locker room that Sean Payton wants.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. It like I said earlier, it sucks to lose a guy like a Justin Simmons. That's, again, a great leader on the field. He's a great player. He's a great leader off the field in the locker room and also in the Denver community. But there's been some headbutting going on from what I understand. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but there's been some headbutting going on in terms of the overall general direction. And quite honestly, it's good to see Justin Simmons be able to go out there, choose his market a little bit, choose where he's going to want to go, and try to find a winner, because that's one of the most widely respected players at the NFL level, regardless of position, regardless of contract status, does not matter. Justin Simmons is widely regarded as one of the best human beings in the NFL. So for him to go out and be able to just pick his market, like I said, choose where he's going to go, that's good for him. It hurts the Broncos in general, but resetting that culture, like you said, it's been a losing culture since 2015 when the Broncos won the Super Bowl. They've had one winning season since then, and that was 2016. They've been below 500 for 8 years now. It's resetting the room, resetting the culture, resetting everything, getting the out with the old, in with the new, resetting everything is a big move here. Phil McLaughlin jumping in here saying, if we trade back in the NFL draft, pick up a quarterback, what do we try to get next?
Defense.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Say what?
Pass rusher or a corner.
Yeah, I'm there with you on that one. I think interior defensive lineman would be a good one if you can get a second round pick. Yep, for pass rush specifically. if you can get a guy maybe like Rook Arohoro out of Clemson, I like the upside there. A little raw, not necessarily an interior defensive guy, but 5 technique somewhere, something like that.
Can you say the name again?
Rook Arohoro.
Oh, row.
Arohoro. I thought
Yeah,
the
during the
H was.
combine, they had a little segment for him. It's like, oh, row your boat.
Oh, really? Okay, so that's interesting. I'd heard it pronounced Arohoro with the H in there. So thank you for that. Thank you for the correction there. That's an intriguing name. Braden Fisk from Florida State's another one that I like a lot. But honestly, if you can go and get a guy like Tavondre Sweat, if you can trade down, get a pick in the 40s, get a guy like Tavondre Sweat, that to me would be immense. That's a big nose tackle, push the pocket, interior pass rusher. I'm all about that life.
Yeah, I mean, a pass rusher inside or out, they need both.
Yep.
Ideally, and someone on the inside to help out Zach Allen is probably a little bit higher priority than getting, that Batman guy that I always talk about on the edge, just because they have so many Robins that they could get by if they could add another interior guy. And there's some options, in that third round. If they believe that, I can't believe I'm saying this, if they believe that Vance Joseph can develop a defensive lineman, well then, somebody like one of those LSU guys, who's that freakishly long LSU defensive lineman?
Oh, damn it. It's not Jenkins, because Jenkins not going to be there in the third round. I know who you're talking about, though. Damn it.
It's not Jefferson. I can't remember which one. It's not Jefferson. I can't remember if it's Wingo or the other one.
Mingo. Dang it.
But anyways, they can get somebody like that if they believe Van Joseph can develop him, who has some of that upside, that athletic ability. Rook Aurora is another one who can do that. There are some options there that can bring that. Corner, this is a deep class. I mean, there's guys that are going to get drafted in the third round that most teams probably had slated as early second round picks. Yeah. In a normal year, the corner class, the tackle class this year, it's just absolutely ridiculously talented. So they can go that way. I think that they're definitely rebuilding the defense, especially getting younger, getting cheaper on the defensive side of the ball. And my question is, when it comes to the defense side of the ball, how much of a voice Vance Joseph will actually have? Because a lot of chatter is that they're essentially preparing Jim Leonard to take over as defensive coordinator, with Vance Joseph's leash very, very short, and that he was almost fired during the season and after the season.
Yeah. Was that the Houston game where it really kind of came down? I believe it was mid-season where I think it was Justin Simmons really kind of went to bat for Vance Joseph. I believe it was after the Houston game.
There was a moment after the Miami Dolphins game where they considered it, and then again, I do think it was after. It was either after the Texans game or after the Chargers game.
Right. Yeah. I know that Justin Simmons went to bat for. Yeah, I know Justin Simmons went to bat for Vance Joseph after one of those games. I believe it was the Houston game. Dot connecting, by the way, if you guys are paying attention. Dot connect, all that. Damn it. So Mason Smith, by the way, is the other defensive lineman we were thinking of, the LSU kid that just destroyed the combine. Him and Mekhi Wingo were just incredible at the combine a couple of weeks ago. We got BK jumping in here, $9.99 super chat. What do you guys think about Justin Fields? Do teams not want him? Are the Bears going to stick with him? To answer your second question first, no, they are not going to stick with him. It does sound like they're going to take Caleb Williams, obviously with the number 1 overall pick, and dangle Justin Smith for as much as they can possibly get him. Eric and I were actually talking about this behind the scenes before we went live, and we talked a little bit, I believe, with the Sam Howell trade, with the Kenny Pickett trade. You're talking who was the other one? Damn it. Mac Jones was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. The quarterback movement here has really kind of dried up the market for Justin Fields in general. I think that probably the best fit for him right now would be to go to Pittsburgh to play with the Steelers behind a guy like Russell Wilson, who kind of profiles a lot like him. But in terms of teams not wanting him, Eric, I don't know, man. What do you think?
It's not that teams don't want him. They don't want him at the price Chicago's asking for him.
Right.
That's the big thing. I mean, there's been plenty of teams that have looked into him. The Atlanta Falcons, if they didn't get Kirk Cousins, they were all about Justin Fields. Well, they got Kirk Cousins, so they pulled out there. The Vikings, since they lost Kirk Cousins, have been linked to Justin Fields, but an in-division trade for a quarterback, that's unlikely. Pittsburgh, it all depends on Wilson. Like, are they willing to do that after essentially guaranteeing Wilson to sign with them that he would be the starter? Which is what led to Kenny Pickett being traded. Will they sit there and go bring in somebody else for him, or just sign somebody off the streets to back him up? And not try to risk, already upsetting that new quarterback that they got. Philadelphia Eagles, they were interested in him. Well, they couldn't get the price down. They went there. The Raiders were interested in him. They didn't want to pay the price. They went elsewhere. The Indianapolis Colts, they were interested in him. Couldn't get the price to meet. So they went and signed Joe Flacco. So there's teams that have been interested for him, but the price the Bears are asking is too high and teams just don't want to pay it. So they go elsewhere.
Well, and I think that the big thing here is the Bears are kind of overplaying their hand here. Everybody knows they're taking Caleb Williams, so why would they trade premium draft capital for a guy like Justin Fields? I mean, it's like you're not going to hold on to the guy. We know that he's not going to be in Chicago, and we know that he's still kind of a project, a reclamation project, at least at this point in his career. I mean, the upside is incredible with him. It very much is. Like, he's a great runner. He has good arm talent. He's just got to figure it out between the ear holes and behind the eyeballs, just processing the game better. It's so frustrating because I had Justin Fields as quarterback 1 in that class. He was my top overall prospect. And this is something that I want to talk about just a little bit in terms of altering my grading scale. Like, I dove into the upside. If he actually hits, if he processes the way that he needs to, he's got upside that's through the roof. Like, the ceiling is the sky with this guy. Like, he's so incredibly talented. But until he actually figures out how to play football on a consistent basis, he's never going to develop into that player that you need him to be, especially as a guy that was drafted, I believe, 11th overall a couple of years ago. So it's a very difficult and frustrating conversation to navigate. But I think that as this market continues to dry up with quarterbacks going, I mean, if the next domino that goes is Ryan Tannehill signs with the Denver Broncos, not reported or just speculating here, just throwing a hypothetical. If Ryan Tannehill signs with the Denver Broncos, what market does Justin Fields even have at that particular point? Like, you're talking maybe the Steelers as a backup option, and you're not trading much more than about a 5th round pick here. So I think Chicago kind of played themselves by trying to overplay the market for what they thought they could get for a guy like Justin Fields. Stephen Eichenbaum jumping in here over on Facebook. First things first, thank you, Stephen, for joining us. We appreciate you for coming in here on a great Friday evening for Dove Valley Deep Divers. Broncos will trade Surtain and move up for Drake May. Okay, Eric, I'm going to let you take this away because I got some thoughts I want to formulate here, and I want to make sure that I do this very cohesively. So I'll let you take this first.
All word has been that the Broncos don't want to move Patrick Surtain. Although if they do want to get into the conversation for one of those top 4 quarterbacks, because the way it seems and the way it sounds is quarterbacks, the top 4, they're gone in the first 6 picks. That's the way it sounds at the moment. Obviously, things can change. If they want to get into that conversation, Patrick Surtain has to be involved. It doesn't sound like they want to, which means that they're probably not getting up there for it. Maybe that will change too. Maybe their whole thing about keeping Patrick Surtain is essentially a ploy to try to, get teams to offer more to try to pry him from them. Although that doesn't work all that often. It's just a very fluid situation for the Broncos. And it's just going to be an interesting couple, little over a month now until the draft.
Yep.
Oof. It's going to be an interesting month and 10-ish days until the draft for just the way the quarterback's going to play out. One team, going back to Justin Fields real quick, one team that's been linked to him is that still needs a quarterback is the New England Patriots. Of course, and they're picking at 3. They've also been linked with Drake May and JJ McCarthy, as well as trading down, as well as the option of trading down and then trading back up again for one of these quarterbacks, depending on how the board falls. So that can definitely bring changes about it. The Pittsburgh Steelers have been linked with wanting to trade up and try to get a quarterback, for post Wilson, who's only on a 1-year deal. The New Orleans Saints, the have also been linked with trying to move up and get a quarterback. The Raiders, even though they brought in Gardner Minshew, they've still been linked with trying to get up in quarterback because Gardner Minshew's contract is that of a bridge quarterback nowadays. They just don't have a bridge to who. They don't have that quarterback to bridge to. So definitely a very fluid situation, and maybe the Broncos will change their mind on Patrick Surtain and including him. I just don't see it.
Right. So let me preface my response to that by saying I'm with you. I don't think that they're going to move him. I don't think that they want to move him, and I don't believe that. Let me rephrase that. I don't think they're going to move him or that they want to move him. If it was me pulling the strings, though, right now, based on everything that we've seen with this team in terms of how they're trying to rebuild this roster, we're talking 2 years, guys, or at least 2024 going into 2025, where you have $100 million in cap space. You can finally get some draft capital back up. As much as I love Pat Surtain, the player, I think that you have to work around him in terms of his value as it stands right now. You still have another year of cost control. You're going into the 5th-year option after that. You're going to have to sign him here soon. He's a top 2 cornerback, if not number 1 cornerback in the NFL, and that carries a lot of value. And the Broncos right now are lacking in draft capital, and they're lacking in talent overall across the roster. This goes back to the conversation of drafting Justin Fields drafting Pat Surtain over Justin Fields a handful of years ago, because what really matters right now, if you are not going to be competitive, why are you holding on to assets that don't necessarily, not necessarily change the game, but can control the outcome of a game? Surtain gets targeted, 4 times a game, maybe? So he's got 4 real plays where he can actually cause an impact on this team. And that, to me, is not enough gravity to carry a player of this kind of value forward while you're trying to rebuild. You need help everywhere. Blow another hole in the boat, rebuild it from the ground up, get as much capital as you possibly can, whether it's 2 first-round picks or a first and a second, and start the rebuild the way you need to. Holding on to Surtain does nothing for you to help you other than just to say, we have the best cornerback in the NFL. Good luck.
That there's a lot there. So part of the reason why you don't move an asset that's as good as Surtain, even if you are rebuilding, is because eventually you'll still need that asset. Granted, you are wasting cost controlled years and all that. But what's the benefit of having a rookie contract? Is that you can carry big contracts elsewhere. So I think that's a big reason why they do want to get a quarterback in the draft either this year or next. So that way they can take full advantage of that rookie contract for that quarterback and build around it. And that includes having Patrick Surtain on a big contract, Quinn Miners on a big contract, Mike McGlinchey's big contract, as well as hopefully a few others that stand out and are able to get big contracts. Browning and Cooper, who knows with them? They're both free agents after the end of this year. Maybe one of them will end up staying on a sizable contract. So teams don't, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. It's not that teams don't want to create needs unnecessarily because they will. It's that they would prefer not to. And it kind of contradicts just what I was getting at, is that they find a reason why it becomes a necessity to make that change. There isn't one for Patrick Surtain at the moment, but that necessity to move him could still change of like, okay, we do love Drake May. We do love JJ McCarthy. We know they're not getting past 5. We are going to do whatever it takes to get to 4 and guarantee ourselves one of them.
Right. So let me alter a little bit. I'm not saying just throw him away for whatever you can get. I'm saying you need to utilize whatever picks that you can potentially get for him, and then that would be the package to go and get your quarterback. And quite honestly, if I'm going to do it, I'm doing it for JJ McCarthy, and I'm starting Jarrett Stidham this year. I'm letting McCarthy sit behind him, and we are going to suck as much, what is possible. The reason why I say that is because McCarthy still needs a lot of time to grow and learn. Like, this is a very specific example that I'm going to throw out to you. If you move on from Surtain, get a first and second round pick, maybe a first and a future first, tie that all together, move up to number 3, go get McCarthy, pair him around with whatever you can possibly get out of the rest of your draft class, bring in whatever free agents you possibly can, throw Stidham to the wolves and let him take all the shots. Let McCarthy grow. Let him learn from Sean Payton. Let him just understand what this offense is. And then with the rest of the draft capital that you potentially could get, because you're still going to have your own future first round pick, you can start to rebuild this roster that way. I'm not saying to throw Pat Surtain out right now. I'm not calling for that. I think that that's a bad idea. However, it makes a lot of sense to do so because you need that extra draft capital to help rebuild this roster.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with that. It's just that there's also that thing of you trade Patrick Surtain, you do all that, you get up there, and JJ McCarthy is Trey Lance. Like it's always that double-edged sword of doing it. Is like, yeah, you need to rebuild this roster and everything, but even rebuilding rosters, you still want some talent on it.
Mm-hmm.
You still do, because eventually, if it just becomes a locker room, it can become a locker room issue. It can make it harder to re-sign guys, and I think that's probably the biggest reason why he's keeping Surtain is the smart move. If you trade him now, a guy who is one of the better corners in the NFL, one of the best corners in the NFL, if you trade him now, when you're getting ready to pay him a big contract, that is going to resonate in the locker room with a team with new ownership, which would be killer for them. That this team doesn't want to spend on talent they draft, and that would be devastating, and it would be hard to, it would be hard to break. I can't remember. There was a team that I was going to use that as an example, but it slipped my mind that this was the case like for them like 5 to 10 years ago, and they'd get guys, they start doing well, and they would trade them because they were just basically rebuilding. And then,
you've got a couple of different examples.
And then every free agency came out. So and so doesn't want to sign with them because the team's not good. So and so doesn't want to sign with them because they don't have that much talent. So you still got to have that talent around. Although it does make sense to move him for the rebuild. Again, it's that double-edged sword.
Right. But I think the two examples that really stick out prominently, but before I grab David here, I'm going to grab that here in just a second, Scott. I think the two examples that really stand out the most are the Miami Dolphins, where they had a guy like a Laramie Tunsil, and they're like, well, we've got this valuable asset. We can go and we can trade Laramie Tunsil to the Houston Texans and get a handful of draft picks and then continue to trade those draft picks off. I think they went and got who did they go get? Damn, was that a part of the Tua deal? I can't remember the exact timeline. Regardless, that's a big example here. They also moved on from Mika Fitzpatrick, another top tier player at the safety position, but still, you can get a similar haul for a Pat Surtain as you can a Mika Fitzpatrick. Then you look at the Houston Texans, what they did, moving on from DeAndre Hopkins, moving on from David Johnson, moving on from a bunch of different players that they had to just build that draft capital and start this rebuild over. Yeah, it sucks to move on from a guy like Laramie Tunsil. It sucks to move on from a guy like Mika Fitzpatrick. It sucks to move on from DeAndre Hopkins. But where are those teams at right now? It's 3 years later from those moves that actually happened. The Miami Dolphins are a very good team in the AFC East. They're a perennial playoff contender. And the Houston Texans, they just won 10 games last year, won the AFC South, and went to the playoffs with a rookie quarterback because that roster is starting to come into and they got good coaching behind them.
That roster was stabilized. They were carried by the quarterback.
That's true. But they
that defense still was not good.
Until because I still believe they have another first round pick that they're going to get this year as well, because they just traded off the 23rd. But they also had plenty of cap space. They went out and brought in a handful of free agents. I know they got Danielle Hunter in there. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of grasping at straws here to help bolster my argument, but I think that I have a good point overall here.
And to be fair with all that, the Texans, they had just outstanding luck with their draft class last year.
Yeah.
Rookies of the year on both sides of the ball. Tank Dell absolutely killing it until he got hurt. Nico Collins just taking a huge step forward.
Yep.
You know, constant rotation on their offensive line. It felt like there for a while, and young guys stepping up there. Like, they were just a lot of luck on that success for it. And they're trying to build on that. That's great. The Miami Dolphins, they just outrun everybody. Their defense is crap, but they just outrun everybody. The fastest offense in the NFL. And it's just helped by a good enough quarterback for what they're doing offensively.
Yeah.
But it just goes back to that quarterbacks in the draft are maybe. And while I'm all for taking shots, I am all for swinging until you hit on that quarterback. It's a completely different conversation if Tua isn't panning out and CJ Stroud didn't have the year he did.
You're absolutely correct. And this is David Youngkin's point here with the $5 super chat saying, I would not reach for a quarterback right now. I would not sell the farm for a maybe because all these quarterbacks are just maybes. I think that there's two guys right now. I'm not sold on Jaden Daniels as of this point. I still have some questions. I want to do another deep dive into this tape. But if I'm talking right now in terms of the quarterbacks in this class, Caleb Williams is the guy. There's no question. He's going to be a superstar at the NFL level. I think Drake May is there too. He may not be the freak athlete in terms of what he can do creating plays behind the line of scrimmage, but this dude has a wicked arm. He's athletic enough to move around. He can be a quality NFL quarterback. I think that's another solid guy. McCarthy, I love the upside, and I'm just curious to see how that all plays out. He's just a moldable ball of clay. Daniels, I'm not quite there, though. I'm just not. There's those maybes, though, between McCarthy, Daniels, Nix, Penix, Spencer Rattler, like they're all just maybe guys. And I understand where David's coming from. And Eric, I agree with you. You've got to identify that guy and then go get him. And to me, I think that if you're going to rebuild it, build up as much of the talent as you can right now, and you're looking 2 years out for a quarterback.
And the thing in going on this maybe the whole maybe thing before we get out of here, just because I like a quarterback in this class doesn't mean he's going to be great. I think he's got enough there to be a good quarterback, be a great quarterback even. But the situation matters so much. Coaching matters so much. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, he did not go to the best situation. Everybody expected him to be the next Peyton Manning, and we're still waiting for him to take that step. I mean, in a tier of quarterbacks, what tier would you put Trevor Lawrence in?
Oh, probably tier 3 right now, if I'm being honest, because you've got your top tier guys, and I'll just give you 5 names here. You've got and one of these is going to come with a caveat because he's coming off the torn Achilles here, but Mahomes, Burrow, Herbert, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers is probably your top tier. Then you got guys like Stafford. I like Kirk Cousins a hell of a lot more than most people do, so I'll put him in that second tier. Then
just give me somebody from tier 3 that you would put in there with Trevor Lawrence. Somebody in that tier 3 that you could put. Give me somebody that you would put in that tier 3 with Trevor Lawrence.
Derek Carr.
Somebody else, because everybody knows that you're a lot higher on Derek Carr.
I'd probably put Jordan Love in there. I'd probably put Purdy in there right now. I'd probably put Stroud's a tier above there. Yeah, that's probably the tier that I would put him in. Derek Carr, the low end Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr tier, and then Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, in that particular area. There's some upside there. We just don't know exactly what they are, and until he can prove to be more consistent, then that's where I would put him.
Michael coming in, great show tonight. Lance and Eric on the Devil.
Thanks, Mike.
Go Broncos. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate your constant support. And I have another question for you, and I asked it to you before we went live. When does upside no longer be a thing? At what point with quarterbacks do we get it where we stop talking about their upside and just accept that they are who they are?
We did talk about this, and I said about 25 is typically the cutoff, and that's like the kind of that rough area where about 25 years old, you know what a quarterback is at the NFL level. I want to throw a caveat out here, because when you have such a raw player, like a guy like Jordan Love, like a guy like JJ McCarthy, let's draw some parallels here, and they need to sit and learn for a little while, because I think Jordan Love's 26 now. We're just now seeing him play like a consistent level for the first time, right? How old is Jordan Love? He's 25. So yeah, that makes sense. So he's still got upside though, because you haven't seen anything of him since he was at Nevada or Utah State, excuse me. Like, it's been 4 years for him to get to where he's at right now as a former first round pick, playing behind Aaron Rodgers. This is the first time we're actually seeing what he is. I still think there's some upside with him, because you don't know exactly what he is as a player because we haven't seen it yet. Does that make sense? I guess to you, You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Hold on, I was just looking at something on here. Um, so Scott comes in saying years in the league is more important than age for me, especially with these guys entering at 24. I agree to an extent. There's actually a lot of data out there that suggests that even if you're entering at the older you are entering the draft, the actually worse off you are. For quarterbacks, especially, there's a lot of data about it, and the success rates of those quarterbacks, with the ideal age being 22. But when you get to the NFL, that cutoff point for the cutoff point for that upside for me is year 3. So this is where the number of years in the NFL comes in. Year 3, and Jordan Love just had year 3. I'll give him a short break because he spent 2 years backing up Aaron Rodgers. That also matters. He's coming into this year. He only threw like 80 total passes, outside of preseason
garbage time, dude. Yeah,
and garbage time duty. So Trevor Lawrence has been the starter since he came in, and so it's going back to him real quick, and I'll bring this full circle back to the quarterbacks in this class. And we're still having the same conversation about the issues with Trevor Lawrence that we were as a rookie. And 3 years down, that isn't what you want. You want to be having that step up. JJ McCarthy, he's coming in 21 years old, and he needs a lot of development. He can use that time like Jordan Love. And I think Jordan Love is, while not the best example, it's a good example of a guy who needed time, needed to sit behind somebody, needed to grow, needed to learn, needed to develop the technique. McCarthy needs a year or two before he's really set up to be a starter in the NFL and go that route. And so you got a question of, it's still a maybe, but you still got to, you still have to give them time. And I know people will be like, oh, we didn't give Drew Lock time. We did. He started a lot, and again, that final year of him, we were still having the same conversation about his issues that we were having as a rookie. We're still having that conversation about
exactly. Hence, he's a reason to back up behind Daniel Jones.
The issues he has now are still the issues that he had as a rookie. Yeah. So you want to see those steps of growth, and showing those steps of growth provides you more time. And Caleb Williams' situation is going to be big for him. I know a lot of people are down on him because of his attitude. I think it's being
massively
blown out of proportion. And a lot of false information is going out and around about Caleb Williams that is also taking a lot of this opinion about his, about how he acts and everything. Jaden Daniels, his type of quarterback, his style of quarterback, it can work in the NFL. I am very concerned about his body type and being as violent of a runner as he can be, and his body being able to sustain that. So when we're looking at these quarterbacks and try to bring it full circle, even though I've been rambling on here for a while, I would rather see Drake May or JJ McCarthy taking Caleb Williams out of the conversation for the Broncos, because I think that they still have that upside you can work with, and you can get a little bit more time to work on developing that upside to where you can see it out there on the field than you can with somebody like Jaden Daniels, who has plenty of college experience, this last year was at a high level, the SEC, closest to the NFL that you get in college football. So it just all just kind of meshes together and goes in. And I'm sorry, I rambled a lot there, and got my thoughts crossed a little bit. But
no, you're good. I did that a little bit ago too. So it's with the whole Pat Surtain thing. Like it happens. It is what it is. I'm with you though. Like if you want to talk upside, you want to talk about players that still have potential, like growth potential. I still think that Trevor Lawrence has some growth potential to him, but I do kind of also think that right now, unless you want to waste the entire year that was Urban Meyer, like, and just call that a garbage year, we're gonna like throw that away, where Lawrence looked okay, but it's Urban Meyer and him kicking his kicker in his ass and dancing with strippers at the club, like horrible situation to go into. Regardless, I think with a player like, and Zach Powers going in and saying, I've lost my mind. Lawrence is a top 10 quarterback in the Prescott Burrow tier minimum. No, Burrow is the second best quarterback. Yeah, Burrow is the second best quarterback in the NFL right now behind Patrick Mahomes, and I think that it's Mahomes, Burrow. Okay, so opinions are I can't say that. I almost said something I'm not allowed to say.
Yeah, everybody has opinions, and opinions are, they're so varied. If everybody had the same opinion, the world would be boring.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wouldn't make for good talk radio or good podcasting, which is what we like to do here on Dove Valley Deep Divers. I'm going to end this conversation here just quickly, though. One last question before I close the show out. You mentioned earlier in our group chat behind the scenes, the Broncos are projected as receiving a 7th round compensatory pick for 2025. Mm-hmm. I'm confused on this whole thing right now because the last that I remember was free agents lost as compared to free agents signed. The overall value of the contract and postseason accolades goes into the compensatory pick formula. Can you explain a little bit as to why that is right now? The Broncos are only receiving a 7th round pick, because to me, you lost Lloyd Cushenberry on a $13.5 million deal or whatever the hell it was. And the highest price free agent that you signed is Brandon Jones at $7 million. So you're going to have to explain this to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
All right. Give me 1 second and I will pull it up. So first of all, the calculation of compensatory picks has changed. It changed with the latest thing. Before it used to be, light contracts cancel out light contracts. Now it's basically an overall value of those contracts. Okay. So the Broncos, they have lost 3 free agents that qualify for it. And now to qualify to be a compensatory pick, compensatory eligible free agent, you have to be an unrestricted free agent. You can't be a street free agent. And your contract couldn't have been touched in any way. So you couldn't have had years taken away. Your contract can't have void years. And you can't be... Actually, I'm not clear on the void years. I know some of them can, some of them can't. So I'd have to double check on that. And then you can't have been a non-tendered free agent. So you can't be like Jonathan Harris. He doesn't qualify for it because he was a restricted free agent that was non-tendered. Right. So the Broncos, they have only lost 3 qualifying free agents. And also to qualify real quick, you have to be above, I think it's $4 million on an average per year basis. I might be mistaken on that as well. So they've only lost, the 3, Lloyd Cushenberry, Josie Jewell, they've only lost the 2 at the moment, Lloyd Cushenberry and Josie Jewell, and they brought in Malcolm Roach and Brandon Jones. And because of the values of those contracts, you're basically given a certain amount of points, so to speak, for it. And the number of points that the Broncos have is that of a net value of a 7th round pick in the compensatory pick formula. And it looks like it's one of the higher ones that could potentially be into a 6th round, because also play time and postseason accolades can also affect the compensatory pick formula. So it does look like that this is a 7th round compensatory pick for agent projected that can move up into a 6th round.
Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. I didn't realize that the compensatory free agency, the compensatory picks deal changed. It very much is. Nick Corte at overthecap.com is probably the best guy to follow. If you guys are on Twitter, make sure you follow him at Nick Corte. I believe OTC is his handle. Regardless, you can find him. He does a great job. He's like 98% on his accuracy in terms of like it's been a long time since he's missed, like big time miss. He's very, very accurate in determining the algorithm, that formula. So it's fun to see. I didn't know that it changed. I'll have to go and do a little bit more research on it.
It's changed a little bit. And it looks like, and a mistake on my end as well, after I check it out, I'll get a little bit more. It looks like that the Broncos are receiving one of the last 3 compensatory picks in the round because of the fact that they don't have a qualifying free agent set. So it's just good for them, since they haven't lost one more than they've gained. It's by the net value of it instead of, by that. By the value of the contract of the player that was signed. So the net value, which is it's a formula that comes up with the 2 players, Cushenberry and Jewell, they've signed for basically $20 million, $21 million, whatever it is combined. Whereas the Broncos, they've signed 2 guys for about $11 to $12 million combined. That value translates to a net value of a 7th, and 32 compensatory picks for player signings hasn't been awarded yet. So they get one right now because of that. If there's more qualifying free agents who do sign, the Broncos could end up losing that. In fact, they only need 2 qualifying free agents for them to no longer be projected to get a 7th round comp pick.
Right. Gotcha. That makes a lot more sense now. Thank you for the breakdown. I didn't mean to go into a long diatribe here. We do got to get out of here, guys. So thank you all for joining us here on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. We want to give a shout out to everybody who showed their massive support. We got David Papa Bear McElrath coming in before the stream got live. Michael Ronquillo a handful of times. Rock Chalk Broncos off the top rope with a $20 super chat. Quentin Caldwell. Again, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you stick around. We appreciate your support and hopefully you enjoyed the show. GLP, Gary Palmer. We got BK, Phil McLaughlin in the house, Stephen Eichenbaum, David Youngkin, Michael Ronquillo again to close us out here on a great Friday evening. Guys, make sure you guys are following us over on Twitter because we keep the conversation going. You guys can find me on Twitter by following me at Lance_S_MHH. For Erick, at Erick Trickel. We also have Scott behind the scenes. You can find him at Scout Kennedy. While you're at it, guys, make sure you guys are following at Mile High Huddle. It's some other account where you guys find breaking news and analysis regarding your Denver Broncos. Facebook users, go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. Keep the conversation going with everybody because we love your guys' insight, your input, and just to have a great football conversation with you all, whether it's on Friday, whether it's Monday through Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, it does not matter. We love your guys' support all over the place. And guys, if you're not financially able to support the show, whether through super chats or going to mhhmerch.com, make sure you guys subscribe wherever you guys are watching or listening to this podcast, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you guys get your content. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. Like every video and article you guys see across all of your social media platforms. And if you love it and you love the work that we do, please share it to everybody out there in your friends list because we like-minded Broncos fans just like you, and we love and appreciate your guys' support. And without you, we couldn't do what we do best, which is cover your Denver Broncos. Now, Erick, before we get out of here, just a couple minutes here. Any last words? What do you got going on this weekend?
Supermarket Simulator.
Back to the video game. So we opened the show with the Supermarket Simulator. Break it down for us. No, I'm kidding. Finding Broncos articles coming out this weekend as well. I'm working on a cornerbacks piece. There's a handful up there. Erick's doing side-by-side comparisons. Make sure you guys check out all of that stuff. Anything specific you're working on for this weekend coming up?
Yeah, I have certain players coming up, but I just can't remember who they are off the top of my head.
Oh, good Lord.
Eventually, I believe two of the big quarterbacks are coming up here soon.
Nice. Hell yeah. I'm looking forward to breaking down these cornerbacks. I was watching Jarvis Brownlee Jr. from Louisville earlier today. Found another guy I'm intrigued for the 2025 class at Edge that I want to talk to you about here privately. But anyways, with that, guys, you all stay safe and take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. And as always, go Broncos. We'll see you guys same time, same place next week.